Welcome everyone to this very special presentation. My name is Lori. I'm very pleased to announce that Solli Kanani is joining us today. She's one of our DxO ambassadors, a wonderful food photographer, award-winning photographer, and she's based in Paris. So she's going to show you some of her beautiful images, her food photography, and also how she uses some of the Nik software to improve and to enhance her images. We have a couple websites. One is the DxO website. If you go to DxO.com, you can view all of our ambassadors here, and also under the Nik Collection, which I'm going to go ahead and go to since she was showing you Nik. If you go under Explore, the Explore tab, and click on Ambassadors, these are some of our ambassadors. And then if you go to Solli, just go ahead and click on that link. And again, this is her bio page. And you can click for her website and for her Instagram. So just going to her website, you know, Solli is one of the best food photographers in my opinion. After many years of knowing many photographers, she does beautiful work. So you may want to check that out. And she also has an Instagram page if you want to follow her there. Beautiful images. So she does landscapes as well as food. Get some inspiration by checking that out. Also, we do have webinars, at least a couple every week. So please go to our webinar page, again, under Explore, check out our webinars. This is our upcoming webinars, and we also have recorded webinars. And if you are French or German, you speak in a different language, we also have some down here. If you just scroll to the bottom of the page, you can access those there as well.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. So my name is Solli, and this evening we'll be talking about creative food photography and how I'm using Perspective FX and Color Efex Pro, two plugins in Nik Collection 3, in order to enhance my images. Okay, perfect. So for those who don't know me, my name is Solli Kanani. I'm from Sweden, but I'm based in Paris in France since almost 10 years. This is also the city where my interests for photography grow and where I started to work professionally as a photographer. I do many types of photography, but food photography is my main occupation. I work with brands, restaurants, and hotels capturing plates of award-winning and Michelin-starred chefs. I was also shortlisted in the prestigious Pink Lady Food Photographer of the year 2020 with these 4 images. And I'm also a Nikon-partner and an ambassador for DxO, like Lori just told you, and X-Rite Photo Colorado. You can follow me on Instagram. I have actually 2 accounts, one for my travel and landscape images here, and my food photos that you can find on my food account. And I recently created a YouTube channel that is totally devoted to food photography. And the link is quite long, but you can find the YouTube channel on my Linktree page that you can find there. And this is my website. So enough about me, let's start. To give you an overview of what we will cover this evening, I would like to share the agenda of this webinar. First, we will focus on what makes a great looking food image, where I will go through the basics, which I find is necessary to know when doing food photography. So here I'll go through the necessary equipment for food photography, everything from camera to lenses. And after the theory, I'll show you how I'm using the Nik Collection 3 plugins, Color Efex Pro and Perspective FX when editing images. First off is how you can use Color Efex Pro to enhance food images with better color and contrast. Then I will show you how you can creative ways of using perspective adjustment in Perspective FX, and finish with how you can create miniature scenes to place the emphasis and focus where you want it. My presentation will be around 45 minutes, and there are many things that I will cover, but due to the time limitation, I will not be able to go in very deep in the topics, but I want to give you the basic tools so that you can experiment and try on your own at home. And after the presentation, there will be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions during the evening, don't hesitate to write them in the chat box, and I'll try to answer to as many as possible in the end of the webinar. So I guess that's about it. Let's move on. What makes a great looking food image? Well, there are many things that plays together, making a scene looking eye-catching in an image. Personally, what matters most for me is the story that the image tells. There is nothing more captivating than that, but also the composition, colors, etc. For example, let's have a look on all the things that were used to take this photo. Apart from the food, there are some tools that we need, such as a camera. Having a DSLR or a mirrorless really doesn't matter, but I would suggest it's a full frame. A basic camera would be good enough, but make sure that you can use different lenses with it. Personally, I'm using a mirrorless full frame, but also my DSLR. Then we have the lenses. If you want to shoot a variety of food photos and like to have different depth of field and getting different lengths to the subject, you'll have to invest in different lenses. The more different lenses you have, the more creative you can be. I often get the question of what lenses I'm using, so I thought sharing them with you. First off is the 50mm. It's the one that I use in the majority of my food photos. It's also called the Nifty 50 as it's so versatile. It's perfect for flat lays, like you can see in this image, but also for 45 angle images like this one, and for head-on shots like this one. So if you're about to buy your first lens and do food photography, I would recommend to start with a 50mm. This one, the 105mm, is my all-time favorite lens for food photography. It's an expensive lens, but if you like macro shots and close-ups where the details of the food is beautifully visible, the 105mm macro will not disappoint you. With this lens, you'll be able to do macro shots like this one, where you can see the texture of the blueberries and also these the water drops. And you'll also be able to do close-ups like this one, where you can see all the details of the pastry. For example, these black sesame seeds and the lemon zest. So if you love details, then this lens is for you. 85mm. This is not a lens I hear other food photographers are using very often. It's normally used in portrait photography. However, I love using the 85mm for food too. It's perfect when you want to get a bit closer than the 50mm, and it has a wonderful and creamy bokeh, as you can see here. The 35mm is great when I have many subjects in a bigger scene. It's a good to have lens, but it totally depends on the photos you will do. It works great for big flat lays like this one, but also ambience photos in restaurants or in food markets. And then we have the 24 to 70mm lens. So far, I have mentioned prime lenses, and those are actually what I prefer working with. The 24-70mm lens is an all-around lens that I know many food photographers are using and recommend. I have tried it, and this is one of the photos I took with it. However, I prefer working with prime lenses, and I believe that as a photographer, you will need to adjust your distance to the subject and not the way around. But if you have the possibility, I would suggest you to try this lens and then decide if you want to invest in it or not. So after lens, we have a tripod. So a tripod is mandatory if you want to have sharp images and also saving time. The benefits of a tripod are many, but the most important ones are that you will avoid out of focus images due to camera shake when shooting handheld, as the camera will be stabilized by the tripod. You will also notice that when shooting food, there are always some of the subject that you would like to move around. meaning you would need your hands free to do so. But thanks to a tripod, you will be able to keep the camera in place and move around your subjects with ease. Light is also important. Natural or artificial, that's totally up to you. I started with natural light, but now when I work professionally, I can't depend on the time where there's a lot of light through the window. With artificial light, I have full control and I can do the shooting any time of the day. And I took these two photos. One is with artificial light, this one, and this one is taken with the natural light. And as you can see, they both look very natural, so you can't really tell which one has been taken with natural light or artificial light. And artificial light is also great when you want to take action shots like these ones. When taking action shots, you need to increase the shutter speed, and then you need more light in your scene. So either you have to be close to a window with a lot of light or use artificial light. So now we have two things left. The first is food props. It's something you definitely need to invest in if you shoot food, because the plates, the cutlery, the cutting board, and other kitchen tools are all important to display the food. You can either buy new products, but personally, I love vintage kitchen items. They are unique and they have so much history to tell with their signs of usage. So I usually go to flea markets, secondhand shops, and Etsy, and I also buy handcrafts. And just to give you an example, in this photo you have this glass bottle that I found on a flea market in Copenhagen, and this cup and fork I bought in a second-hand shop in Sweden. And in this image I used a vintage wooden crate and an old bowl that I bought at the flea market in Paris. Last but not least, the background. When it comes to backgrounds, there are different materials you can choose between. I have a selection of both vinyl and wooden boards, but also boards that I have made myself. Vinyls are very practical and easy to transport. They are great when you're shooting on location, but also in your studio or at home, as they don't take up a lot of space. In this photo, I've used a vinyl, and even in this photo, this is a vinyl with a wooden table print, and as you can see, it looks very authentic, and it matches the style of the photo I wanted to take without the need of having a real big wooden table in the studio. And this is a background that I made myself with paint and a sponge, and this is exactly the same background, but that I have edited in editing software. So you can actually use the same background, but then just change the color later and adapt it to the scene. So let's say that we have all equipment that is needed, but it still doesn't mean we'll be able to take a great photo. You could have the most beautiful dish in the world and the best camera, but if you don't know how to create a scene that is eye-catching, your image will not stand out and attract the viewer. And that is why composition is important. And there are a few composition rules that I will share with you this evening. One composition rule that is often used in food photography is the rule of thirds. This is when you divide a photo into thirds with two horizontal and vertical lines. And the crossing points that you have here are the point of interest. And if you put your main subject in any of these, the result tends to be more balanced and eye-pleasing. Then we have the golden triangle. It's another powerful composition rule, as it lets the eye of the viewer travel from one point to another. You can either place your subject along the diagonals or fill the triangles with the subject. The golden ratio is another composition rule. These compositions leads the eye of the viewer through the entire image. For example, here in the Fibonacci spiral that you can get by drawing a curve from the opposite corners, you'll end up having a spiral. And you should put your main subjects here in the smallest square, and then you add other subjects along the rest of the spiral. And this will add flow and movement to your image, like you can see here. And then we have the 5 grid. It's another golden ratio rule, and it resembles the rules of third. But as you can see here, the center lines are closer to each other, meaning that your subject would be more centrally located, and the viewer would see it faster. Composition rules can be very useful if you have no idea where to start, and they work great as guiding lines. However, remember that these are only a support to help you. Don't hesitate to break the rules. The result will still matter on your artistic style and how you catch the attention of the viewer, and that can be done with or without any of the composition rules. So let's move on to the editing part. I don't know how many of you that are familiar to Color Efex, but to those of you who aren't, I'll quickly explain what this plugin does. It has 55 creative filters and 20 image recipes, making this plugin a goldmine. So if you want your images to pop out, I totally recommend you to use it. And I will show you a few photos that I will edit this evening together with you. And this is one of them. So this is the before photo and this is the after, and I'll show you how I got the result. So I'll just go out from the presentation mode and go to Lightroom. So here we have, so this is the raw file. So before using the plugin, I prepare the raw file in Lightroom, but this can also be done in DxO Photolab. To save time, I have already prepared this photo, but I will show you quickly the modifications that I have done. So first, I will just make this full screen. Okay, so first I've checked remove chromatic aberration and also enable profile correction. And then I have selected the brand of my camera and the model of the lens. And I have adjusted the color temperature. And then I also decreased the highlights. And I increased open up the shadows and increased the whites. So that's what I did. And just to show you the before photo, this is the before and this is the after, but there are still more things we can do with the photo. So when I have prepared the raw file in Lightroom, I open it in Color Efex Pro 4. So you click on the image and then you go to Edit In, and then you click on Color Efex Pro 4. And then Edit. And this will create a copy of the image, so you will never edit the raw file. Okay, so let's experiment with this cupcake photo. And as you can see, as I told you just a few minutes ago, you have already 20 recipes here. So these are several filters that are saved as one recipe, and then you have all the 50 filters here separately that you can also use. But for this image, I actually used a clarity bump. So that's a recipe that you can find here. And I'll just show you how to look first. And you can do a few modifications here. So what I did, I'll just remove here. Okay, so first, as you can see, in this recipe is based on 3 different filters. So tonal contrast, brilliance warmth, and pro contrast. And the good thing is that you can actually click and work in each filter. So you can edit the filter here and to create the final image. So first I go to tonal contrast and I increase it a little bit. So I go up to 29, I think, something like this. And I think the midtones are quite okay. I just adjusted it to, yeah, I think maybe 12, something like this. And the shadows, I want to reduce the shadows. So I go down to -20. I open up the shadows. So I think maybe around, yeah, -23. And I also want to increase the saturation very slightly. So maybe I want the red color to pop out on these cherries. So maybe around, I think this is good. And then I go to brilliance and warmth. Here I actually want to decrease a little bit of the saturation and also the warmth, because I prefer to have a colder temperature in this image because I don't like when it's too yellow. So I think I'll go down until, I think, yeah, -11%. And then I go to pro contrast. And I think the correct color cast, I will not adjust this. And maybe I will just increase the correct contrast a little bit to 40%. And the dynamic contrast, I leave it as it is. So I think I'm pretty happy with the image like it is now. And then I simply save it. And you'll see that there will be a copy of it here in that will be saved in Lightroom. And I'm quite happy with it, but I think I'll just edit the green, the saturation, because I don't like when it's so bright. So I will decrease the saturation slightly. And then I will also, because here I have a white ball and I think this is too warm or too beige. So I'll actually decrease the saturation and also use a brush. I think it's something. So here I'll use a brush on the plate. Just make it bigger so you can see. So I don't like the beige color because I don't think it matches the scene that has a colder temperature. So I'll just use the brush like this and you'll be able to see where I'm applying this to. So I'll quickly cover some parts of the plates, like something like this. It doesn't need to be perfect because you can't see all of it. And then I will just adjust the color temperature, so a little bit colder. And then I'll open up the shadows a little bit and also decrease the saturation. So I think something like that. So this is the final result. So it's very easy to edit, and let's see, have a look on. So this is the result, and this is another photo that I have edited in Color Efex. And here I would wanted to increase the, we have a lot of different colors, so it's a very colorful image, but I want to have more texture and also increase the vibrance. So what I did here, I'll just open up the image in Lightroom. Let's find the raw file that's we have here. So this is the raw file, and I'll show you how it looked like before. So it was quite dark before. And what I've done in Lightroom is I removed the chromatic aberration and also enabled profile correction, and chose the brand of the camera. And then I increased the exposure slightly. I decrease the color temperature, and I open up the shadows and increase the whites. And then I open the image in Color Efex Pro 4. So it's very important that you prepare the photo before. So with the basic modifications, just like modifying the highlights and shadows. So you don't need to edit it a lot, but just prepare the basic things. And so here we have the berry photo, and I used a recipe on this, and that's the super punch that we have here. I'll just enlarge the window so you can see. So here, this recipe is based on 3 different filters: bleach bypass, contrast only, and pro contrast. So you can see the filters are adding a lot of contrast, and that's what I wanted. And but I still want to edit and modify the filters a little bit. So if we begin with the bleach bypass that we have here, I will increase the brightness because I think it's a bit too dark, and I will go up to maybe something like this, 19%. But here, as you can see, now when I increase the brightness, this plum looks a bit too bright to me, and also this strawberry. I'll just show the before and after so you can see what I mean. So here, the strawberry was a bit darker, and I preferred it that way. I think it's too bright. And what you can do here is to use a control point. And with a control point, you can actually control the areas where you want the filter effect and where you don't want it. So if you don't want the filter effect, you simply click on minus. That will add a control point that is set to 0 opacity. And if you want to add the filter, you click on this that is already set to 100% opacity. So I will begin with the strawberry. I'll click here, and you can see immediately that it changed. So you can see here. I'll just open up so you can see before and after. And I'll also add a control point to the plum. And if you check this small box here under control points, you'll be able to see where in the image the control point is affecting. So everything that is black is affecting that area. So here you can see that I think I could actually add another control point to the plum. I'll do it like this. So here we have the entire plum covered, and the strawberry, I'll add another one there. And I think I'm pretty happy now. And you can see that this area is now a bit gray. So you could actually add a plus control point just to remove that, and maybe another one there, because I still want the filter to be effect to cover these areas. And then we'll be able to see how the image looks like. So before and after, so you can see here the before and after on the strawberry. And I think that's everything I did. I think I also did something on here on contrast only. I decreased the contrast slightly. So we have something like this. And then I must say I'm very happy with the image. And I simply save it to Lightroom. So that's the before and after. And then we have this image. I'll just show you in full mode screen. So this is the before and this is the after photo. So in this photo, I used a vinyl background printed with a wooden table top. But as you can see, there is not a lot of texture, so you can actually see that it's a vinyl, or at least since I know I'm using a vinyl, I can see it. And here I wanted to achieve or add more texture while still keeping the texture of these berries. So I'll quickly show what I did to achieve this effect. So let's go to Lightroom and find the raw file of that image that we have here. So this is, no, here is the raw file. So this is the raw file and this is the before photo. And what I did here, as you can see, I did the same like in the other photos. I removed the chromatic aberration, enabled profile corrections, and then I adjusted the color temperature slightly, and I open up the shadows because as you can see, it's pretty dark. So I want to open up the shadows so we have more light. And I actually added texture, but that's actually something we don't need to do because we'll do that in Color Efex. So this is the before photo. And then we'll edit it in Color Efex. So here it is, and I'll just enlarge the window so you can see better. And in this photo, I actually I couldn't find any. So when I work in Color Efex, I try to first see if there is any of the recipes that would have the style that I want to achieve. But here I couldn't actually find something that I would like to use. You have many recipes, so I think I would suggest you just to browse through them all and see if there is anything that you like, or you can just make your own recipe or just use the filters separately. So here I will just remove all these. So here I started with bleach bypass that we have here. And as you can see, it's pretty dark and a bit too much texture, and the color, the beautiful red color of the cherries are gone, and I don't want that. So what I will do is first to just increase the brightness slightly, and then I will go up with this, increase the saturation to at least, I think, something like this, so minus 13%. So here I'm actually only looking on the wooden board. So I think this is the result that I want to achieve. So I like the color and I like the texture, because here it was too dark. So I think this is perfect. And the same for the color. It was too desaturated here, and I wanted to have a bit more color. So I think this is perfect. And just to show you the before and after photo, this is the before and this is the after. So now you can see it actually looks like a real wooden table. But I'm still not happy with the cherries, because as you can see in the before photo, they're more red, and here they're very dark. So what I will do here, I'll use the color points, and I'll add them on the cherries. So I'm using the minus. So remove the color effects like this. Actually, I will just do like this. So we have covering these cherries, and then just to make sure to see what we're doing, I will check these boxes. You can actually, if you check this box, all these boxes will be checked, and then you'll be able to see how much of the area that your control points are covering. So I think I'll add one more there. So we have the entire cherry covered, and one more there. And here there are still more cherries that are not entirely covered. So I'll add, I mean, you can be generous with the color points. You can add the more if needed. So I will put this here, and maybe one more there, and there. I think that's good. And I will actually add a plus color point, because you can see that this area now is a little bit gray. So I'm going to just add a plus control points and increase it a little bit. So we have the filter that will affect that area, and maybe one more there, and just adjust the opacity, and I think one there. Let's see, there we have it, and something like this, and then I think I'll be happy. Yeah, something like this. I think we can also add one small there. Something like that. So let's have a look on the image. I think they are okay. Let's see. So let's see the before and after. So you can see that the color of the cherries, they are exactly the same as before. But the only thing that I have changed with this filter is the texture of the wooden table or the vinyl that I use, the background, and also this basket. But all the cherries are exactly the same. They have the same color. So I think happy with this photo and save it to Lightroom. And we have a last photo that I will show you, and it's of the toast. I'll just show you in full screen. So we have this image, and this is the before, and this is the after. And I'll quickly show you how I achieved this result, because as you can see, I have opened up the shadows and increased the saturation and also added more texture. So I'll quickly show you how I've done that in Color Efex. Let's open it up here in Lightroom. So I prepared the image like all the other images. I just open up the shadows here and adjusted the color temperature. And then I open it in Color Efex Pro and click on Edit. So here, let's see. Okay, so I'll remove this filter, and here I actually use two different filters. I started with details extracts that you can find detail extractor here. And what I did here, I think I didn't do many adjustments. I increased the contrast a little bit, and also the detail extractor. As you can see, I think 30 is too much, but I think maybe yeah, 28% is perfect. And then I also I increase the saturation to I think this is pretty good, so around 30%, but then of course it depends on your image that you're working on. And the good thing here is that you can add another filter. So when you're done with modifying the filter that you have started with, you simply click here, plus on the plus sign, add filter. So here we add another filter, and I actually use the bleach bypass to add more texture. But as you can see, it's not really what I want, so I need to do some adjustments in this filter. So I begin with the brightness. I want to have the image a bit brighter, so around 20%. And I want to increase the saturation, so around, I think this is pretty good. And then I want to decrease the contrasts slightly, so something like this. And yeah, I'll leave this, maybe decrease it slightly. And here I'm going to use control points, because I think it's a bit too, the filter is affecting the toast here that in a way that I don't like. So I'll use the control points on the toast, so you can see here. Oops. And a minus here, and then I'm using another control points here, and on the knife just a small part, and I'll use one on the bread and maybe on this small bowl. And as you can see here, you can actually make the control point bigger and smaller, so you can, it's totally up to you. And on the eggs, I think I'll add one on each here. Let's see, there we go. And I think I will add maybe one more. So it's good to have a look on what you're covering. So I think we need some more on the toasts, maybe one on each side here, and something like this. And then I'll add one here on the asparagus there. So you can see everything that is black, that's where you're removing the filter effect. So I think I'm pretty happy. I will just show you how it looks. So now it looks more natural. And I'll show you the before picture and after. So you can see there is more texture in the egg, the asparagus, and also the plate has more texture, and also the background, and it's also a bit more colorful. So I think I'm happy with this image, and then I simply save it. So let's see. So let's move on in the presentation. The next plugin is Perspective FX, and just as its name reveals, it's used to make geometric corrections. It's mostly used in architectural photography, but I'm going to show you how you can use it in food photography as well. So I'm going to show you how. So this is the before photo and this is the after. And there are two things that are not good looking here. First of all, the background here is not straight. So this is something that I need to adjust. And as you can see, the glass is not straight either. But it's easy to fix with Perspective FX. And this is the edited version. So I'll show you what I did. And so we will open the raw file here in Lightroom. So this is the raw file. And I've made very small modifications. I made the lens corrections and decrease the highlights and open up the shadows. And then I will actually open it in Adobe Photoshop first, because I want to fix this line there that is not straight. Okay, perfect. So as you can see here, when you open, or actually when you're working in Adobe Photoshop, you have this selective tool from Nik Collection. And this is a new updated selective tool bar that has been adapted to the interface of Photoshop, and you'll find all the plugins here. So it's very easy and very handy when you're working with your photos. So what I will do first is to fix this line before I'm going to Perspective FX. So I'm dragging down this, let's see, I'll just use warp to fix this small area. So here I will just show you. So I'll copy and paste, and I'll show you what I'm doing exactly. And then I'll go to Edit, Transform, and Warp, because I want to drag up the backdrop so it's in line with this side. So I will do something like this, and it's fine with the lemon. I mean, it's nothing that you can see very clearly, and I think something like this is good. And then I press on OK, and let's see how it looks like. So I think this is pretty good if we minimize the image. So now it's perfectly straight, and but as you can see, we have this line here. So what I will do is I will flatten the image, and you could actually use the blur tool or the the spot healer here. So I think something you can do. Something like this. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit bigger. And then you just dot it on the line so you won't be able to see it. And then this is the results, and you can actually use the blur tool to just blur it. So now we have prepared the image, but we still have the glass that is not straight. And that's something that I will fix in Perspective FX. So I'll just click on it here. Perspective FX. And there we go. And so there are 6 different main functions in the plugin Perspective FX. We have distortion, volume, deformation, perspective, horizon, and crop and miniature effects. And for in this image where I have lines that I want to straighten, I'm actually using the perspective function. And if I click on auto, it's actually almost perfect, but you can actually do it with these force vertical parallel lines as well. So I'll just reset the picture because it went, let's see. Okay, so I'll use these, and they're very easy to work with. You just lean it a few angles towards the glass and apply. I think that's not very what I wanted, so I'll go to undo. Can just click on preview, and it's still not straight. At least I think we're starting to have something that looks straight here. I think here you have to actually play around with the lines. Here I'm pretty satisfied. Now the glass is straight, and then I click on apply. So here the glass is straight and the line behind is straight as well. So it's something, so if you have a glass or I don't know, a ball or something that is not straight, you can easily straighten it here in Perspective FX. And I'm not going to save this one. Don't save. Okay, and then we have you can also create miniature scenes to place the emphasis and focus where you want it. So you could actually use Perspective FX to get a tilt and shift effect on your photos. So just to explain you quickly, the difference between a traditional lens and a tilt and shift lens is that with a traditional lens, the focal plane the focal plane is parallel to the image sensor, whereas with a tilt and shift lens, the focal plane can actually be angled. And thanks to miniature effect and perspective FX, you can actually achieve the same effects. And I'm going to show you how I did that in this photo. So this is the before and this is the after, and I'm going to show you here. So this is the raw file. No. I think we don't have the raw file here. But this is, let's see, where we have it. It's not here. Ah, yes, because I actually removed, I made a small adjustment, but here you can actually see that everything in the background is sharp and it's not very attractive because it takes too much attention from the viewer. And if you want the viewer to be more focused on the pastry, then I would use the miniature effects in perspective FX, and that's something that we can do by going straight to perspective FX here. So here it's important that you shoot the photo with a high f-stop, so you have everything sharp in your image, because the reason why I'm using the tilt and shift effect here is actually that because if I would shoot with a normal lens and focus on this part, then everything here would be blurry. But I still want to have a blurry effect in the background, but still have the viewer's attention to the entire pastry and not only the first, this part. So what I did with my camera was to shoot with a higher f-stop. So I have the entire pastry in focus, and that means that also the background is in focus, but it's something that we can easily fix here by going to miniature effects, and then we will click here. So you can see that this part and this part gets blurry, and you can actually play with these lines here and just put this here and just mark what you want to have covered with the filter. So for example, I want the entire pastry to be in focus. So here we have that one in focus, but I also want a part of the fork to be in focus. So we can do like this, and I'll uncheck symmetric blur and symmetric position. This means that I can actually change the angle of these. So what I will do is I'll do something like this. So we have more of the fork, or at least a part of it in focus. And here you can actually adjust the blurriness. So you can either increase or decrease it. So here I want to decrease it slightly. And here I will just move this and angle it a bit more so we won't have all those flowers in focus. So now we have the pastry in focus, and I'll apply it. So that's how you easily can get a tilt and shift effects in perspective FX. And I think I have one more picture left to show you, and that's how you can achieve a miniature scene or miniature illusion in your photos. So if you look on the before photo here, you can see that everything, all the subjects in front of the main subject are sharp. And I think that could draw a bit of our attention. So here I tried to use the miniature effect. So only the main subject is sharp and everything else is out of focus. And this is can be easily done in perspective FX, like I just showed you here. So this is the raw file that I have prepared, and I edit in perspective FX. And let's see. There we go. So now we have the image here, and then I go all the way down to miniature effects and click here. So I want this panettone to be in focus. So here I'll drag these lines there and here. So, and then you can just adapt how blurry you want the rest of the scene to be. If it's a bit too much here, you can actually just decrease or increase it until you are happy with it. So I think this is pretty good. And here I will just uncheck symmetric blur and I think increase it a little bit. And then when I'm happy with the results, I just click on apply. So this is how you get a miniature optical illusion on your images. So I think I will not save this one. And then, okay guys, so let's see. So we have reached the end of the webinar and I hope you have learned something new. Let's move on to the Q&A session. Lori, do we have any questions?
We do have some questions. To start out with, are mainly your images for web or print, or both?
My personal photos are mainly for web, but for clients, then sometimes they're for print, but the majority of the cases, they're actually web.
Okay, and do you sharpen your images?
Yes, I do. I sharpen them.
Okay, great.
For print, if it's print, yes, actually sharpen even for web.
Okay. For your 85mm lens, is it f1.8 or 1.4?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, your 85mm lens that you use, do you know if it's f1.8 or
1.4?
1.4. Okay, so it's really shallow depth of field there. Okay, and a couple of questions about lighting. So somebody was asking, do you use on-camera flash or studio lighting, soft boxes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I never use on-camera flash. And the reason is because you should never shoot an object with and pointing the light straight on it because it will be pretty flat. So the most flattering position of the lights, for the photo is to use the lights either on the back or on the side, but never in front. So so the artificial light that I'm using are off camera. And then I also use modifiers because you have to modify the lens, and I'm using soft boxes and bounce cards because you have to control the lights and direct it exactly where you want to have it in the scene.
Okay, and somebody was asking if you have any issues with food melting or dripping while you're taking a shot.
Yes, that's a very good question. There are many people who are asking me if I shoot the food when it's cold or warm, because I think it totally depends on the food that you're shooting. So for example, if you're going to shoot like a cake with whipped cream, then it's very important that you're prepared, even with the lights and everything on your table. So when the cake is ready, then you start shooting, because the cream or the whipped cream can actually melt. And another example is hot food. For example, if you have a sauce, You don't want, because if you leave the sauce too long, it will be cold and you will have this film that is created on top of it. So you have to be prepared and prepare the scene, even the lights, and you can even shoot the plates without the food and make sure that the light is okay. And then you start preparing the food. Or if you are working, if you're shooting in a restaurant, then they just bring in the plate for you on the table. So that's very important to be prepared and plan everything. But then if I would shoot a hot soup, I would shoot it. If I would shoot a soup, I would photograph it when it's cold, because if I would use some topping on top of it, if it's warm, then the topping would maybe melt. So when shooting soups, I let them be cold, and then I just stir them so to remove the film, and then I add the topping. So it totally depends on what you're shooting, but it's always good to be prepared with everything, and even the lights and also the composition that you're planning to have.
Okay, great. Also, a few people noticed that you choose to go a little bit cooler with some of your food photography versus like a warmer tone. Is there a reason for that? Is it just
Yeah, I think it's a
stylizing it?
personal style. I don't like warm photos. It depends. I think the photo with the orange juice, it was pretty warm to be my style, but usually I try to remove I try to adjust the color temperature and make them a bit colder and remove the yellow tint. But that's the personal style. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Starting from scratch on a new image, how long does it take you on average to go from start to finish?
Actually, it can take a lot of time. If there are things, when I get an idea, if I want to shoot something, I write down the ingredients that I need to have to prepare the food, and then I do the shopping. And I also make a sketch, because that's very important, because you don't want to prepare your food and then not having any idea of how you want to create your scene. So that's very important, to make a sketch and try to figure out what kind of composition you want to use first. And even on the paper, you can decide where you want to have your main subject, and also write down what background you want to use, and the tool, what type of plates, and this kind of equipment that you want to be shown in the image. And then and then I prepare the scene, and then the food, and then I shoot. So I think it totally depends on what I'm shooting, but it can take at least 2 hours.
So I want to thank Solli for a great presentation. I'll let her go ahead and close out and say goodbye to everybody, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to the host DxO for hosting the webinar, and thank you to all of the attendees for participating. And if you have any other question, you can just drop me a line. You have my Instagram and my website, so don't hesitate. I would be happy to help you.
Great.
And yeah, thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Yes, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.